where's law enforcement? Well, they protect.
Hey folks, this is Michael Adams, No Religion, Dystopia, No Universal Belief. Now a very special guest, Glen Boulier, author of Witnessing Bigfoot. And Glen, thank you for joining me. We've had a couple really excellent conversations that were never recorded, so I'm looking forward to this and having other folks hear what you have to say about your experience, what is known as Bigfoot. And started from a little scatterbrain today. Had my son for the past couple days, and last night, Glenn, we were trying to film the moon, and of all things, an orb got in the way. I'm not making it up, so right now I'm downloading it. It'll be on my YouTube channel. Basically an orb, the moon morphing into an orb, or a orb blocking the moon. So anyways, that's not what I was expecting, and I wasn't looking forward to that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it seems to be folks like us we have these experiences for a reason, I guess. And I think part of it is to share the truth about what's going on here with the supernatural. Folks, I'm going to read a little bit from, this is from Google, booksgoogle.com. And Glenn, if there's anything inaccurate about the description of the book, let me know, okay?
Yeah.
Or you want to add on to the thing? It says here, Glen Boulier spotted Bigfoot 2 times on the roads outside of his hometown in Princeton, BC. These sightings were the start of his quest to discover the true nature of the elusive creature. He spent years researching the stories, the legends, the speculations. He questioned people about their own particular experiences and interviewed researchers, hunters and trackers, forest workers, and many others. Years of research led him to many stories, from brief encounters to long-term interactions. When Glenn learned about tracks that disappeared in the middle of a snowfield and the complete failure, I'm saying it, failure of cameras to capture an image, he knew then that Bigfoot was more than a rarely seen physical being of the woods. He dug in and went on to speak with Native Americans in the U.S., the first people in Canada, and others who knew about Bigfoot's connections with the spirit worlds. Witnessing Bigfoot objectively documents what he found. Glenn wishes that the Bigfoot he saw was a simple forest creature, but the evidence seems to suggest that it is more. Now you can add Glenn's fascinating discoveries to everything else you know about Bigfoot and come to your own conclusions. The quest continues. And it says book jacket. So, I haven't had the privilege yet of reading your book, Glenn, but I've had the privilege of talking to you, and we seem to be on the same page about what we're going through. So, first, let's go a little bit more in detail. Let people know, if you wish to, more about who Glen Boulier is. Do you mind?
No, I don't, Michael. Thank you. Born in eastern Canada on the island, Prince Edward Island. Moved westward years ago. Dad was in the armed forces, and he was stationed at a number of locations throughout the country. We would end up in British Columbia and reside in the Princeton area for something like 15 years. Opportunity arose over time. I had an athletic background, and it all started one morning on the Bigfoot issue with my brother and myself, Alan Boulier. We went out on a morning run in North Princeton, and if anyone knows the town and how it's structured, there's a relative steep cliff that comes down at what's called the Wooden Bridge, or along Tulameen Road. And we went out for that morning run around 5:30 a.m. A morning in April. And what we liked about this course, and I had run this and biked it, and I used to use weight jackets. I was getting ultimately what would be tryouts with an MLB team and an NFL team over time, and this is why I was training extensively. But the one morning in April, it was overcast and just it looked like it was going to snow, just a little bit of filtering of snow, and it would. But not until we were coming down on the end of the jog, and we were just in a cooling process, just walking, not saying anything. It was just daylight, and we were nearing that wooden bridge that leads into main downtown Princeton. Now, I don't know when Alan picked it up, but I saw it, and it would come up from the river. Now, we didn't see exactly where, but when it reached the road, Tulameen Road, I noticed that this animal took 3 steps to cross a 2 10-foot lane roadway, so 3 steps for around 20 feet. Very big creature, very tall creature, and it would put its back to us and lift itself up onto the gravel road that went up and around Princeton's uncontrolled airport. Now, that was the road that we had jogged up that morning. So we stopped dead and were just looking. Didn't know what we were dealing with. And Alan, I don't like to say he's gullible, but he immediately yelled at this thing and turned it around, and we actually startled it, and it scanned for where we were. Now, we were motionless at the time, so it took a couple of seconds for this thing to locate us. Now, over the next 20 seconds, there was a standoff. When it found us, it tilted its neck slightly. It was haired head to toe, no ears visible, no neck visible. You couldn't see the eyes socket area really, only because of it was just light out. But you could see that it had a lot less hair on the face, a lot less hair on the chest. We anticipated that this was a male just by the structuring. Now, in the next, as I said, the next 20-25 seconds, this lasted for about a minute, the whole sighting. It looked around a little bit, realized, I think, you could see the intelligence it was thinking, and when it realized that we weren't a threat, it just turned around and walked rather quick pace up that gravel road and into the morning. The thing that was interesting is I think it took Alan and me on a little brotherly argument. I just wanted to go into town and forget all about this, and he was trying to talk me into following it. I didn't really want to, but he would do that. Immediately, we were on this, and I noticed that with that fine filtering of snow I was mentioning that had started, the ground was still frozen in early April, but it was leaving a barefoot track. You could see the outline. You could see the toe separation from the ball of the foot and the heel. And the interesting thing to this was the separation point of each step. I would have to jump from step to step that this thing was making. And I'm 5'8". I was about 160 pounds at that time. And I noticed that these prints were in single file, like they weren't offsetting like a lot of creatures walk or how we walk as human beings. And it was walking, and to me, it was unusual. So we followed for a bit, but we never saw it again. So Alan had placed a piece of cardboard over one of the prints, and we tried to preserve anything we couldn't. It was melting, and we got nothing. But because I was training for upcoming football and things like this, my credibility was at stake, so we didn't tell anyone about this except for family. And then I did make a brief call. I knew a fellow that was up in the forestry ranks, and I had told him that something was wandering around the bush in North Princeton. That's totally unusual. We had measured a little while later, because I noticed there was overhangs off the bank side of the hillside, and this creature just came in contact with this, walking upright the entire time. And it was just over 8 feet tall. It would be when we measured the area that he came in contact with. And I guesstimated the weight to be over 600 pounds for the size of this thing. Now, I would let this slide for the longest time. When I contacted friends or people I knew, or even relatives that went and trained with me, or whatever we did around the airport area, because it was a 3-mile course, I would never tell them that I appreciated them coming along because of what we'd seen and what I knew was running around up there. And I wouldn't go up into that area again by myself early morning or late evening. I jogged middle day because there was the odd vehicle around or the odd person that has something to do with this small little airport, but that was that. Now, over time, 11 years later, this was 1974 on the first sighting. over time, I would meet my wife-to-be, and she was from Calgary, Alberta, and I was from Princeton, and we met in Kelowna, and we would hit it off, and then we would move to Calgary and start a family, and I work with the city of Calgary, and on life goes. But over time, when we went back to see my mother, she was situated in Princeton until she passed away in '98. We would go and visit her 2 or 3, 4 times a year, depending. And I would get laid off in the fall, and we'd head out and visit Princeton. Now, the idea of it is that whether it was my brother Alan or whether it was my brother Richard or whether it was friends, we would go for a drive or go for a bike ride or take a jog or take a walk, and we would go into areas of Princeton like we'd always done. We hunted in the region, all kinds of things. And when we would go and visit her, Alan or Richard or someone would turn around and say, "Hey, let's go looking for the Sasquatch." It was meant just to get out. There wasn't a lot to do. It's just a small little logging town, and things are limited to what you can do in these types of places. So off we go. Now, 11 years later, as I'd mentioned, in 1985, we were there visiting my mother in October, and it was about 9:30 in the evening, and it was a cool evening, clear. And Richard, my youngest brother, he would say to me, "Well, let's go for another ride." He had his old Pinto, and off we go. Now, the road has since caved in, and it's you can't travel it anymore. But at that time in '85, it was intact, and we went up that road, and up top, what I call a shelf route that goes east to west or vice versa. There's approximately 5 homesteads in there. It's a lonely type area because below is the town of Princeton, and up top's a little hillside, and then you're at the uncontrolled airport, and then it's the hills, and then off into the wilderness you go. We were on the first pass at 9:30 in the evening, and I think we were something like 3/4 of the way across this stretch, and I saw movement coming out of a property there. It had its arm up on the gate, and it was coming through. Now, because the headlights were just catching it off to the right-hand side, and I was passenger, I noticed that whatever it was didn't want to be on that right-hand side on that property because really it didn't have anywhere to go. And it came right out in front of us, I would say somewhere around 100 feet ahead, and ran across the road. Richard stopped the car. He said, "What is it?" And it ran across into the darkness. Now, the thing is, Richard backed that car up. The dust and everything on this gravel road passed us by. He situates the car on and off this gravel road, and the headlights pointing up on the hillside of this place that goes to this airport runway area. And sure enough, doesn't he catch it in the headlights? And it's like you're at an outdoor movie. We're pushed back in our seats by what we're seeing here. I'm watching a creature standing upright, shuffling its weight from foot to foot. It's nervous, you could tell. You could see the matted hair on this thing from head to toe. And I'm watching the breath come off it because it's expelling air quite rapidly. And it looks similar to what we had seen, my other brother and I, 11 years earlier, except for we're getting a way better look at this because it's in direct light, artificial light. Now, it looks around, and this is the interesting thing with this. I would watch a creature that size and that weightage, over 600 pounds again, go on a dead run and clear that hillside in seconds, and it was gone. I've never seen anything move so fast, and it was upright the whole time, and immediately. Richard and I have argued about this because we didn't know who started it, but one of us had said, get going, and we're going to try to head off over on the other side of the airport and meet this thing. Now, we get over there, of course. We're not saying much. We're in the darkness, lights are off, and we never seen it again. So, I realized that in this period that there's something still roaming the hills around Princeton, and this thing always seems to be coming from whatever it's doing in the Princeton town. It's brazen enough to come into town, do whatever it's doing, gathering food, supplement, whatever, and then leaving, but here we are. So I let that one slide, and I just sort of, back to Calgary we go, and I put it all in my memory banks, and I said, listen, I says, I'm in a city now of, at that time, I think it was 330,000 people, and I said, no chance of seeing Bigfoot, so I'm not going to pursue this. Now, I'll add in this other story before I had mentioned that we pick up our first PC computer in the year 2000. Now, interestingly enough, in around 1970, and I would have been around 15 years old, our mother was out the one night, and we lived on what was called Harold Street. Now, this was 4 years previously to the 74 sighting, and of course, just because the way things go, I wouldn't put it all together until I started to research this subject over time, over 20 years. But the one night, I hear our mother absolutely bashing the front door on the house because I had it locked. It was a little bit later at night. I was at home, and I was babysitting my brothers, my two other younger brothers, and I took the locks off the door, and we let her in, and she immediately fell in front of us and to the floor, and she was saying all kinds of crazy things, and she was crying like she was going to be murdered, scratched her way across the floor and hid behind a recliner chair in the living room. And I'm going, we were going, well, what's the matter? What's happened? And she said, it's outside. And I said, what? I said, is somebody assaulting you? What is it? And she said, no. She said, there's something. It looked right at me. It was going into the neighbor's yard across the street, had its hand up on the gate opening it, and it stopped and looked at me. And she said, it's half man and half animal. And I got a little bit fearful on that. I just cracked the blinds and looked. Of course, saw nothing. There is a street light outside the house. Now, over time, our son and myself, one of our sons, would measure the distance between where she sighted this thing, and it was less than 50 feet under a street light area, and she got a really good look at it. But the woman was completely terrified, and she wouldn't talk much about it, never would. But the things that I did get out of her was the same type of situation or creature that we had saw. And right one house down from us on Harold Avenue, there is what we call a finger stretch of woods that come down along the river, because Princeton borders wilderness. And these creatures could easily come down this wooded stretch because we're only 25 feet from the backyard to this wilderness, so we knew where it had come from. So on a combination of things and over time, we had the 4 family members that had witnessed this species at least 3 times. So in the year 2000, my wife and I, we would pick up our first PC. Now, one night, I wanted to just punch up the Bigfoot issue and see where this was all going on concerning this subject. And I think the thing that disturbed me was that I broke it down that over 85% plus things that were on the internet concerning the Bigfoot Sasquatch subject was complete rubbish and all garbage. It was disturbing because of what we had seen, and I had actually filed this with a scientific organization out of the Pacific Northwest, and I wanted them to know what was wandering around in the British Columbia area, because other regions had seen sightings and things were going on. So I started to research and investigate this, and it wasn't getting better. I found that, yes, there was sightings and there was things going on, but the more you pried and the more that you investigated, the further it would go into other gray areas and other regions, and then it would start to border the paranormal issues. And when I started to pursue things for this book project that I had put together, that I wanted people to have an option of what everyone was dealing with. And the reason why is because I'd seen all sides of this thing, and you weren't making any friends, but that's not what this was about. It was about getting out what is happening, where it's going, and who the players are. Because people had said to me, and they said, listen, Glenn, you wouldn't lie to us, or you have nothing to gain from this really, so you tell us what it would be, or what you think it could only be if it isn't what you had seen. Because as Michael had mentioned earlier, we were hoping that this was just a flesh and blood creature or species that was undiscovered, very lucky, and it was just a matter of time. But the book that came out last year, and what it details is it's not going to be found. There are too many ifs with this now. There's too many things going on. And what I found over time is there's a number of investigators, or let's say researching individuals or others. I'm seeing that they're being affected by some unseen force that is altering their minds, and some of them are becoming mentally unstable or actually insane. And I've seen and known some of these people for years, and that's why I know there's a real gray area in this. Now, the problem I'm having is I try to continuously focus on this thing being just undiscovered. But as you'd mentioned earlier, and it's in the project, is that when I identified how many trail cams and cameras and things that are in operation that are trying to find these giants, and they're finding their cameras destroyed, or they're finding their cameras turned around, or they're finding them covered. Now, some of it's a hit and miss thing, but others, some of these cameras are being helicoptered in to locations where these Bigfoot are supposed to have their place of origin and things like this. So when I talked to the Native Americans about all these things and investigated it, they had almost convinced me that there was other players in this, and that the Bigfoot Sasquatch issue was an entire off-planet entity. Now, that's where it's gone. And they say that the Bigfoot or Sasquatch is a big brother or a scout for the extraterrestrial. Now, that is coming up a lot in sightings, because presently, when there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings, there seems to be a identified flying object sighting in proximity to these creature sightings. And that is closing together rapidly, and things are happening. And I would look into this. Now, it's not my field, and I left that alone. But the bottom line is I wanted to know about the Bigfoot issue. Problem that I had that started this is that if we were talking that there could be such things and that direction that this is going, I don't believe for 1 minute that a creature or a species has traveled how many millions of miles, however they're doing it, because they're telling me that they're traveling, like the Native Americans and others are telling me that these creatures or these entities or species are traveling through portals and dimensional doorways. This is coming up 7, 8 times out of 10. Now, the problem I had with that, of course, is I have seen the creature twice. There is no doubting it, and I was right there. My brother has seen it, my other brother has seen it, and it looks like our mother has seen it. And I'm trying to explain it as a flesh and blood, just undiscovered issue. But not for 1 minute do I believe that something has traveled millions of miles and is trucking around in a small town gathering garbage or deer kills or vegetables or fruit, whatever it does, because I would look into this and found that the creatures were coming down from the Tulameen, Colmont region and getting what they wanted out of the Princeton area. So I tried to keep focusing on that. Now, over time, it would get into the camera issue. I'm not an extensive photographer, but I freelanced for the NFL for about 1.5 years. I know my camera and just a photographer end of things. So I know roughly what the film idea of it is and things like that. Now, we're not getting worthwhile film, really. Not a cut and dried issue. Same with stills and other things. Now, the problem is, at any given time, there are, I think it's even more so now, because I think it was over 1.5 million trail cams in operation in North America at any given time. It could be anyone. It could be forestry, fisheries, national parks, people. It doesn't matter. Bottom line is, they're not getting the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch on film, really, or video. Now, when I contacted some big companies like Bushnell, Kodak, there was a number of others, and I was investigating this end of it. I said, why are we not picking it up? Because if we can startle something like that in 1974, you should be able to get it really good looking on film. Now, these companies, even though I wasn't on the payroll, I was working close up with a couple of them, 3 of them, over time, and they said, Glenn, we'll show you thousands of pictures, and you tell us why we're not getting a picture of this. And there's no way that you can hide a giant anymore. There's government out there, there's military out there, ex-military, there's groups, organizations, scientific organizations. And then it would get into tracking. Now, I talked to a number of individuals from different countries, and they're gifted trackers in their own regions on their own continents. And over time, they would teach me the ins and outs of tracking and different things like this, because that was where I was at in my manuscript on this entire investigative idea of this phenomena, and I wanted to know, because things were coming in where and sorry to interrupt this way, but the thing is that I wanted to separate silliness from actuality and things that were actually going on. Now, over time, the track issue would come in, especially in fresh snow or mud or things like this, where the creature had just been seen. Now, in a clearing or anywhere on a lake or places like this, it's immediately saw, people are following, They come upon the end of the tracks in a clearing, and they're gone. I've got 3 instances of this kind of thing in the book that I narrowed it down to because of the many that came in. There was an ice fisherman in Idaho, there was a dairy farmer in Washington State, and there was 2 hunters in Washington State. They had just saw the creature, not so much the hunters, but there were still fresh tracks, but the dairy farmer and the ice fisherman had just saw the creature. By the time he got his shotgun, the dairy farmer and his dogs, creature had gone around the side of the barn, over his barbed wire fence, and in a clearing, and the tracks end. The dogs won't follow. They're putting and whimpering and things like that, which it seems like they do, but he got over that fence to the last tracks. And he said, Glenn, he says, understand me. He said, I stood in the final tracks. He said there was no jump-off point, there was no depth changes, there was no squiggles, there was no toe grabs, there was no backtracking. He said, you know what I had to do? He said, I had to look straight up. He says, that's the only place that this thing could go. And that's one of the stories that's highlighted in there, because one thing that happened over time is other stories after the book reached its deadlines and hit the market. Of course, there would be other things and other stories and things continuously that would come into me. Now, the one real quick story is in mid-California. I forget exactly the trail, but there was a young fellow hiking in what would be a rainfall in the forest, and he would come out near a clearing, and he was in the mud, and he just went up and sort of kneeled down and leaned against a tree on this tree line, and he heard a noise coming down this trail that he had just come through, and it was muddy and this and that. Well, he could hear something walking in the mud because you could hear the suction of the prints as whatever it was or whoever it was coming out, and he was just going to talk to them when they came out past the tree line. And what was interesting in his situation was that something would come out of the tree line, and he could not believe what he was like up against. This thing came out and come out off to his left side, but in front of him, and it was extensively breathing, and it was the Sasquatch creature. He was close to it, and it hadn't picked him up. It was raining and a little bit overcast, misty, and he was fearful, and he pushed himself up harder against this tree. Now, this thing would immediately walk out and hit this clearing and then disappear. Now, he found it fascinating that this Sasquatch Bigfoot creature would study its surroundings, and I had noticed this as well. They do that. They study what they're up against, and then they move on. So once he got over fear and everything else, because he was really he couldn't believe this, and he looked and there was tracks and this and that. He would immediately follow. He gets into the clearing. He's going to come and just continuously follow this thing. The tracks end in the clearing, and he could not identify where this thing had gone. There's no trees in the immediate area. There's no rock. It's just the odd grassy patches, this kind of thing. And he said the same type of thing. He says, I have no idea where this thing went. And these kind of things seem to be happening more and more. Now, over time, and I never thought we'd have any idea on what we would be dealing with when we go down south, because being in Alberta, we always drop down to Montana or the U.S. Southwest. In 2005, we were 5 years into renting what is the rental fire towers that the U.S. Forest Service has on a recreation program. I think there's over I think there's over 70 of them now. But we had been renting these towers from the year 2000. Well, in 2005, we're in Montana, and we have rented Webb Mountain Tower, and it is a 20-foot structure, I think it was. It is concrete blocked, and the deck sits up overlooking Lake Koocanusa and the town in the background of Eureka, Montana. And we've rented this for a long weekend in July of 2005 summer, and we just have loved the tower situation. You lock a security gate behind you down the road. You're in there by yourself. It's just an excellent program. But anyway, we've rented this tower. On the first night, it's evening, and being, as I said, a photographer of things, I wanted to get some pictures of the lookout and of the what's coming sunset. Now, I would be in an area that I thought, and I had thought about this, that a predator like a mountain lion or a bear somewhere along that line would sit up on top of this little area, look down into the valley, and anything that would come up would be sort of funneled into the area where the predator would sit. So I thought this area was quite unique. So anyway, I'm over there. I come back. I'm heading towards the tower. Our youngest boy's with us, Adrian, at that time. And he says, Daddy says, do you smell that? And I said, no. But what I thought was interesting was I had picked up on something that was coming up. There was a light breeze, and it was bringing it up from down below. And I noticed he was picking up on it. So I'm going, okay, whatever. So he comes down off the tower. He goes back over, and he starts over to where I was talking about earlier. And I start to come back. He's still there. And we hear what we think is a woman screaming. And he says, Dad, did you hear that? And when I got to him, that the hair on his body was standing up, and he said, what was that? He said, it sounds like a woman in trouble. And we listened. We didn't hear nothing, but we heard some knocking. Didn't know what that was. And we said, okay, well, let's just get back to the tower. I forget how far we were away, 200 feet or something. We get into the tower, and it was like, okay, well, let's just forget this, and away we go on to our weekend of relaxation. We would go into Kalispell, Montana, the next day, get what we needed, check out a few places, come back, and it was late evening when we got back. And then that evening, this was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would hear my wife's cell phone, and it was beeping. It was low battery, and I would tell her, I said, listen, can you turn that off? I don't know where it is. I guess, can you turn it off? She does. But what was interesting, and I have very good hearing, I noticed that the metal door and the lock that is down below on the separate room compartment on the lookout, because we're up on the main deck, and then there's a room below that holds firewood, and it's locked. It's a metal door with a combination lock on it. Now this lock was being played with and pulled, and I could hear it being yanked. I says to our youngest, I says to my wife, I says, I'm not liking this because we've got visitors. Now the thing is that being from Canada, we're not allowed weaponry and things like that in these towers, and although the Americans are, and they pack. But the most we've got out of it is a hunting knife. So anyway, I noticed that whatever it was that was yanking on the lock had to come up 2 concrete steps and was playing around with it, and then I could hear them let themselves down, and they started to walk around the tower. Now, it's the type of rock substance, not like moon rock, I would say, but it's a different type of rock that you could actually hear when other substances or other things are coming in contact with it. So I can tell there's something walking around on the north side of the tower, then the east side of the tower. They come in contact with a beer bottle that I had seen about, let's say, 50 feet away off the tower. I heard the beer bottle, I did not hear it, and then I heard it again, and we would find out the next day whatever it was, it picked it up and took it and then set it down and moved it over. Whatever it was out there would come around to the south side of the tower. Now, at Webb Mountain, there's a drop-off point that goes down into the valley and then down to the lake and that whole thing. That whatever it was on the south side of the tower spent a lot of time there, and my wife and I, she would figure it out first, that a lot of the people that were visiting the tower, although you're not supposed to, they were throwing their dishwater or their grease or food substances off the south end of the tower amongst the rocks down below, away from the tower. Whatever it was interested in that and moving rock, and would do so. Now, realizing that we had a visitor, we didn't know who or what it was, because one thing that was running through my mind at this whole duration was the idea that it was some crazed hunter with a hunting rifle, and I didn't want to deal with him. So we barricaded the door and hoped for the best. Now, the rock separation would stop, and then there was a quiet. But then I would hear like an unusual sound, and then whatever it was jumped up immediately towards the tower. There's a drop-off of by over 4 feet to the first level. It came upward, and it came in contact with the ground, and it seemed like it jumped to solid feet together. And it didn't come down like you see when moose or elk or reindeer or any kind of that family comes in contact with rock. You know, there's a slippage or there's different things. This came down solid, and then it started to walk again. It was on the south side, immediately below the tower. I didn't want to go outside, as I'd mentioned, because I really was hoping it was a human being. But they didn't make that jump. There was no way they were going to make it because I could hear it. We felt it, just a slight vibration in the tower, in the air type thing. Now, over time, Adrian would just slightly fall asleep, and my wife was back sleeping, and bless her heart, because I guess she figured we had it covered, but we had nothing covered. I had my heart in my throat because this was going on. Now, we would hear something clear its throat, and like a gargle, and then I would hear a whistle, and whatever it was communicating with another. And then it was like I said, Adrian, did you pick up on that? And he did. Now, we knew that now there was possibly more than one. I started looking over to the east horizon, and I'm going, come on now, just give us dawn, give us something that we can get out of this darkness and deal with this. So over time, this lasted until dawn, and then I could hear whatever it was walk off towards the west and go down to that valley, and that was done. Now, I would go out in the morning, and I would get down at times on my hands and knees, and I would look for tracks. I would find my runner tracks, I would find my wife's, I would find Adrian's. I found nothing else but a couple of deer tracks, and I knew there was a buck and a couple of does coming up, and they were visible to us the entire weekend. But what was going on made no tracks or stuck to the rock as much as possible, and we got nothing, not one single track otherwise. So over time, I would get when we got back, I would look into that region, and I would find a Lewiston, Idaho couple that actually saw the Bigfoot creature at the Big Creek Baldy Lookout Tower that is just southwest of where we were at Webb. We have rented both towers, and I would extensively cover this situation to find out what the forestry and parks and others knew about this area, and the sightings and things would start to come available. So we knew that the lookout towers were involved with these type of situations, because I would apply this to forestry and others would come forward. So we knew that this type of thing was going on. So it's these kind of things that have happened, and that I would research and investigate over time, and then put it all together in this book project, and here we are.
Well, Glenn, first of all, did I pronounce your last name right?
Yeah.
Okay, because you said Boulier.
It's Boulier. It's Boulier.
Okay, but I heard you say Boulier, so because I didn't butcher somebody else's name, did I? How good is it? Anyways, yeah, I know you're telling the truth, and just from my own experiences, so it's that's for sure. I guess the question I have. There's so many questions. So hopefully this is going to be more than a part one series of an interview, because there's just way too much to talk about in order to kind of explain what really is happening with folks. But so you pretty much have laid the groundwork of having some kind of what most people would feel is a flat out, no question, flesh and blood creature. And nothing necessarily. Well, there is definitely some supernatural things when you talk about the footprints ending in the middle of nowhere. Where do we go with this? Where would I go with this with you? You know, because I don't want to just hit everyone over the head with what we know. I'm going to build it up so that we have some, give them some groundwork here. How many people? How do I ask this question? Because I know what I've seen, and what I saw. When you saw it on its just upright. But when I saw the one I saw flat up, that I know. Well, there's several ones I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And one during daylight, it ran incredibly fast, and it didn't look like it was on its just on its two legs upright. It was actually running, leaning forwards, kind of like if you can imagine someone who rides 10 speeds, you know, a professional racer, how they lean forwards. That's pretty much how that was running. But then the one that I saw at night, which was from above in a ravine, it was flat out black as can be. I did not see the eyes or the eye shine, but the person that was with me did. That was a very supernatural and bizarre situation. Just from my own experience from last night. Let's go with the camera situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know you got experience with that, and I'm developing experience with it. And I know for a fact, me and my son, we were filming this orb, but we couldn't see it with our naked eyes. And it couldn't have been that far. It couldn't have been. I wouldn't be surprised if it was only a few inches away. The way it was blocking the camera and blocking the sky, or it could have been 30 feet, or it could have been. It had to be somewhere between the camera and the tree line. So, my point being there is that how they this spiritual in nature, and orbs are definitely something that's seen quite a bit with Bigfoot. So maybe we'll go there.
Okay.
Orbs. What's been your research on that as far as the people seeing quote unquote orbs?
Well,
and Bigfoot.
Well, I haven't pursued that end of it, except for a couple of stories that came in to me concerning the Bigfoot idea of things that when it was sighted, there was orbs in that area around the creature a few feet off. I can't put out the person's name because I did promise her that. But the bottom line is she's at a point or a place in the last, let's say 3-4 years and on, that the Sasquatch Bigfoot creature responds to her and leaves gifts and things like this. Now, I don't write too much about that, only because of, in respect of witnesses and people that didn't want to be identified, because they are professional people. That was an issue. So I promised them that. But that kind of thing is coming in, and the problem that I have is that, and now we'll go over to the paranormal issue, is that they're saying that, and I found it every time, whoever was involved quite deep into this type of situation with this phenomena are telepathically communicating with the Bigfoot creature. Now, as I said, I've got a few problems with that from the idea of what we saw. I just felt that my key thing to the sightings we've had is that when Alan, my brother, yells at the thing, startles it, turns it around, that to me would be simple flesh and blood issues. But what's coming in to me now, I have a warning in my book, and because I was very thankful that the publisher that went and printed my book project left the project almost intact. We had to pull out one chapter because it was specifically pointing towards biblical ideas, spirituality, and I just went for it at that. Now, we were still allowed to print a number of things. You'll see it in the project because I would contact a number of churches throughout Canada. I would contact them in the Pacific Northwest, southwestern states, and I would talk to their pastorships or their elders, different people, but mainly the pastorships. And almost unanimously, after everything was said and done, they said we're dealing with, or what could possibly be, a spiritual force, demonic issue. You and I talked briefly about this. The issue is, and people ask me, and I said, look, if the Bigfoot still survives and has not become extinct, there's still sightings going on, of course, and I don't believe it is. But I believe that, and I almost can guarantee you that something has latched on to the phenomena itself and is using it to further their goals. Now, I know for a fact there's spiritual involvement in with the Bigfoot issue, because when the creatures telepathically communicate, or when they are leading people into areas where they are, and you can go sit with them, and there's authors, other writers that have material out there where you can go and meet these creatures, and they'll speak with you and this kind of thing. They're called the forest people, or the this kind of thing. Now, none of this to me coincides with what we saw, because we felt we're dealing with a species that's running around in the Princeton area, and over time I would uncover that it was just that. On the Thompson Plateau area, whether it's Tulameen, Colmont, Princeton, Headley, Carameas, they've all had numerous sightings, they've all had numerous things go on, and it's all based on an animal species or a primate species that hasn't been discovered. But the people that are contacting me are, let's say, towards the paranormal side of things, and they said, well, Glenn, you should be able to identify this because you've been involved with this subject like close up. They've been in your life. Now, that's one reason why I started to pursue the spiritual end of this, because we are evangelicals and we have a background and believe in God. We believe in the scriptures, and here we are. I had asked our good Lord over time, and I said, okay, why us? I can see running across something by accident once, but I can't see running across something 4 or 5 times. There's 2 stories I haven't mentioned yet, and one is strange, and the other one's stranger. But it's possible that it's still a flesh and blood issue. But bottom line is, what's it all about? So the issue is I'd contact these pastorships and we'd start breaking this down. I kept their last names out of the issue. It wasn't that. It was where we were headed. There was the odd pastor that would say, you know what, Glenn, it is still possible that it is still flesh and blood, and let's leave it at that. I had other pastorships say, listen, just be careful now, because people are going to go looking for this, and you sound like you may be strong enough to overcome. But people that are unknowing, and there is a spiritual side to this, the Native Americans agree with me 100%, just in different directions. Because I believe that the forces that are working with the phenomena are fallen spiritual forces, and they've latched onto something that they can get something out of this and lead man astray, and it is happening. It's just another avenue or another branch off a tree of things that are leading mankind astray. And I'm finding that the more that I don't look into it much these days because, as I said, we're in a city now of 1.2 million, and I leave the subject alone. But there's still people that contact me, if you can believe this. I've had the death threat issue already about leaving this subject alone or else. Now, that just comes back again to if this was just a simple species that hasn't been discovered yet, and it's out there picking flowers and gathering berries, well, then you shouldn't be getting these kind of things going on, barring kooks and whatever. But bottom line is I've got people that are trying to link me into what they're doing concerning this subject, and I know where they're going and where they're headed, and it's very, very dangerous because I'm already seeing the results of them having physical and mental issues. I had let's just say ufologists contact me over the years as well on this because of the connection between Bigfoot and the extraterrestrial issue I'd mentioned earlier. And they said, listen, there's a number of our researchers, investigators that are having serious issues. They're either dying or mysteriously, or they're coming down with mental illness, and it's tracking fast. And are you seeing that in your field? And I said, yes, I am. I'm seeing normal people come in contact with individuals that, as I'd mentioned with the psychic Sasquatch, Michael, he has been teaching and traveling worldwide. Now, he communicates with these creatures all the time. He is an educated individual, but still, what he's teaching and who he's teaching it to, I've seen changes in the individuals that he comes in contact with, and before a number of months or years are done, these people are, let's just put it simple, they're toast. They're not normal anymore. So something's affecting them. My book project hits on that, and as it all unfolded is that I want people to be careful because what they go looking for, they might not like what they find, and it'll be just limited resources on what can help them get out. They won't know what they're dealing with, and the Bigfoot idea of things is involved with that. If it was just like say a national parks person out doing their job and they run into a creature that size, well, let's hope that we're at where we're at, flesh and blood wise. But there's other things coming aboard, and as I'd mentioned, is the Bigfoot creature has been asked the question about biblical basic things. And they are discussing that they shouldn't say or have the answers to those questions. But their upper line, let's say, which would be the extraterrestrial, has the biblical question answers. They are God. And this is all starting to fit together. And it's coming out in plain sight because I'm seeing people jump aboard these programs. Because when they turn around and say, Glenn, well, where are you at? Because look at, okay, you've seen it, your family's been involved with it, but you didn't pursue it. Why won't they talk to you? Why won't they visit you? Why won't they take you there? Remember what I had mentioned? The thing is concerning the extraterrestrial idea of it. I had over time. This got a little bit dark in substance because I pursued individuals that were abducted. Now, not my field, and once I cleared the crazies and the people that, were out to lunch or whatever, there was the odd story that things had been done to them and they wanted answers, and I said, listen, it's not for me to help you with that because I can only direct you, but you need to get professional help of one way or the other because something has been done to you. And that come down to that story where that individual said, yes, they were abducted by the extraterrestrial and there was medical procedures to be done. But the issue is they said, Glenn, listen, they said when I was on the table and the instruments were around and there was things, off in the corner I could see the movement and the Bigfoot creature was there. It wasn't participating, but it was there. And they said, I'm sure of what I was seeing. And then it came to them in different things like hypnosis, dreams, and other things that brought this kind of stuff out. But the bottom line is they were shell-shocked with life because they don't want nobody to know about who they are, where they are, and they're trying to get past this. And they just had found me one night because I'd put the word out. I've gone all over the world, just on the World Wide Web and chat rooms and cork boards and you name it, to try to gather information and then separate the idea of where this subject is going. And it's getting very intense and very dangerous because I'm seeing the results of those forces that are latching on to this phenomena and affecting people that start off with normal sightings or they're pursuing something different. We've actually got, if you can believe this, there's a family member on my wife's side, and he's using astral projection to try to figure out things and go to different levels and do what he does in those realms. Now, the thing is, he's questioned me biblically on a number of things, and you can tell he's an outsider, and he struggles and fights you at every turn. The bottom line is we know who's in charge of all this. I am finding Bigfoot researchers, investigators, and some scientific people. They are using occult practices and shamanism to try to locate these creatures. And the creatures, a lot of times, are answering. But who's answering, and what are they supplying them with? Because they have told me, some of these researchers, people have told me, they said, Glenn, we're getting it. Why aren't you getting it? And I said, you have no idea what you're dealing with. So we're seeing the results already of spiritual forces involved with the Bigfoot issue.
Amen to that. And it's you know, if you don't have the proper defense, which at the end of the day, it's not religion either. It's about having a personal relationship with the true and living God that created this world.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's tough. That's the way it is. You're not. I mean, it's a nightmare.
Yes, and
even you know, even for those of us who do know what's going on and what the answer is, and many times it's folks like us that's it. Because you know, there's witchcraft involved with this. There's Satanism involved with this. There's, like you said, the biblical explanation. Some of the extra chronicle books out there, like Jasher, Book of Enoch, and etc. It's undeniable at this point, for at least for me. And here's the problem. Dealing with these subjects, because I think they're all the same thing. Whatever these entities are, they can manifest as one thing or the other, or they are that thing, and then they can, because of certain rituals and practices, and because of these people are, unfortunately, a lot of folks, and today, as a whole. And I can say this because most of my life I was that person, and it was by the mercy and grace of the true and living God that I have a clue of what's going on. It's not because of anything that I'm nothing special, not at all. And the problem here is that we live in a culture society which the truth of God, the word of God's word, has been pretty much obfuscated, taken out of the lexicon that the average person, most people think, when they think of, say, the Bible, their closest thing to an education is coming from the History Channel. It's propaganda against the truth, not for the truth.
Yeah, or a Hollywood movie, anything.
You're right. And I think so. It's just you know, one of the things when you were talking, you know, the first thing is like, why is this happening? Why are these people doing this? And of course, this is a much more complicated question and much more deeper than people understand, because there are people that have nefarious motives out there. They really do. And to mess with people, to get people demonized, demon-possessed, and get them, you know, they're serving the dark side, these things, and they believing that they're getting some kind of supernatural special power, and they are in this physical fallen realm.
No, they are.
But there's a heavy price that they're paying, and they're trying to get other people to pay with that price as well.
Yeah. See, it's getting around the ideas of what is silliness and what's actuality and reality, and the dangerous ones that I'm talking about is, and we're, of course, today we're just talking about the Bigfoot Sasquatch idea, because who'd have thought that many years ago when we started investigating this, that it was just a thing involved with the wilderness of North America, and that was it. But over time, you sit back in the shadows, you watch, you see, you get by everything involved with these type of things. And the bottom line, as I'd mentioned earlier, is with our background, I wanted to know why us. We're nothing special. We just happen to be in one place, and here it is, and it happened more than once. But I want to know who it belongs to. And if it doesn't belong to the creator of all things, then who are the players and how they've latched on to this, because I'm seeing the result of something. When I mention to someone, like an investigator, on what we're talking about, they laugh in your face. And they said, that's impossible.
Well, part of this part too is they're under a very strong delusion where they think that they're actually applying the scientific method. And there's a certain point, and I have a scientific background anyways, so I know what it's all about. And you cannot, there's a certain point when that just breaks down, and you have to get honest about that. You have to get honest about what's really going on, and most people do not want to because of what you said earlier, and what you shared is that there's a heavy price to pay being honest about this issue, and one of the things is being ostracized and being rejected by the majority of the quote-unquote Bigfoot community or whatever it is, which I never wanted to be part of it anyways. I just wanted to know the truth of this whole thing, and then, because it's, as well as I do that there's only two paths you can go by.
Yep.
Some people call it the right path and the left path. Some people call, you can follow the devil and follow the true and living God, our Lord Savior Jesus Christ. Oh, no, I said that. I'm sorry, folks, but I'm not sorry, because that's your only answer you're going to have in all this. And hopefully we're going to expand upon this, a whole answer and what the solution is and what's really going on, because people need to know the truth about this. As unglamorous as that is, so Glenn, 99% of the folks that will hear this, I should rephrase that, because a lot of folks that listen to my show or listen to what's on, my YouTube channel are already in line with us. Although there's also a group of people that are on the other side that are,
of course,
they're watching us. You know what I mean, and doing their dark magic, but. The fact of the matter is that, at some point you just cannot worry more about what other people think. And, of course, the older you get, the more you realize how pointless that is anyways.
Yep.
Because, it's really important. This issue is so important because it goes beyond, a 600, 800-pound, 12-foot thing, 8 to 12-foot hairy humanoid, half man, half ape thing, and you and I know that. Way beyond what the vast majority of what are talking about. And you know what, Glenn? If we can just serve God and help one person escape from this deception, we've done our job. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
that's all it's about at this point. Yeah. And I know a lot of people will think that we're sounding really religious, but no, we're just being really honest.
Yeah, I want those folks that that are borderlining, or they're having. There's a fellow contacted me this week. He said, Glenn, he says, I was told from a researcher in Ohio to pick up your project, read the book, and yada yada. And they had mentioned, and they said, listen, what is it really all about? And I had a chance to talk to him about it. Now, and as you had mentioned, if one person can get an idea and escape, because there's being people brought into this all the time, and they're so gung-ho at the start, they go headlong into things, and then somebody introduces the crazy things. But the issue is, it's not a funny idea of it. It's what they're going to get entrapped in, and then those spirits allow them a little bit more and a little bit more. And I know that they try their best on us as a family, and that's how it works. But the bottom line is to have the strengths, and that's why this project. There was another author, and he had mentioned. He said, Glenn, you're really finalizing this subject. People can believe whatever they want to, but the bottom line is for the people that are caught in between or in the middle, and they're searching, and then they have the other side of the story. They have an option. Yes, there will be people out there. They'll deliver. See, when they say, how come they can take us there, or we can see it, but how come you can't take us there, or why can't you see it? I'm asked that all the time. I said, do you know what you're dealing with? If you're not pulling my leg and you're actually going there and you're actually seeing, or let's say things are manifesting, well, you better understand who the players are. Because, yes, I admit, I'm no wizard or anything like that. I'm just a writer. I'm just an average Joe. I was out training for ball. Here it is. But as I'd mentioned earlier, it seems like something over time, whether the Sasquatch still exists, I believe that hopefully they do. But the issue is that if there's a number of them, they say there's supposed to be less than 4,000, this kind of stuff. They just start rounding off numbers. Bottom line is if they do exist, these forces that are hounding man are still players with the Bigfoot issue. Now they're saying, why is it that the Bigfoot knows when to turn around, when to escape? I've had people tell me that he's seeing into the ultraviolet spectrum, yada, yada. Bottom line is to it all, is the forces that are playing this, and if the creature actually exists, they warn them, and then they make a run for it. However they do it, but they're doing it. And that's if they still exist. Now, if the Bigfoot's done and it's extinct, then the players now are the spiritual forces that have fallen, and they realize they can really get something out of this because it's affecting possibly thousands of people, and it's growing at a phenomenal rate.
Yeah, and it's just the connections that it has. These things, apparently, whether we're talking about the Nephilim, whether we're talking about other entities, they, from my own personal experience, there's nothing. They're not there simply to entertain you or be your friend. They might, this is. You'll see a lot of this stuff, and you mentioned I think you mentioned astral projection earlier. Yes, I think you did. And one of the things is that these things happening and the astral projecting, I think it's you have a relative that's involved in this and making a huge mistake in what they're doing. This is a big element to all this as well. So, and that's something that cannot just approach and adequately in a minute or two. Yep. So, the thing is, I got about 10 more minutes. So if you got something here, then. But before we go any further, though, but I'm hoping, will you be able to do a part 2 at least with this?
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Okay, because not only did promote the book, but also to I think a honest, sober conversation. I know a lot of people think they've heard that, especially from those that come from the quote-unquote scientific realm of it, or, the flesh and blood,
Yeah.
There's a lot of quote-unquote researchers out there. They're presenting an argument that's very appealing to the general masses, but it's such a big issue, and it, like you said, it's ramping up. And I don't want to put the pressure on you. It's not my place to do that, But I feel strongly that we have a huge responsibility to give people that alternative to what's out there, as unappealing and as unromantic, if you will, about it. Because, like you said, and I know, I also have had the same experiences when being out there in the field, which I really haven't done that much. I go once in a while. I don't spend a lot of time. In fact, I don't have to go very far to have these things to happen. So, but I will tell you this, that I've had the experience of urinating blood. I know people that have had terrible health issues like cancer and their heart stopping and heart problems. Hard times, taking care of themselves, sleeping. Then there's, being tormented at home, that kind of thing. Or, it gets to be a point where, and if it wasn't for the fact that God had a little bit of mercy on me and gave me some understanding about deliverance and what the power of the name of Jesus Christ is, but also you have to have the faith in Jesus. It's one thing to say, and it's true that God will protect you, give you reprieve from this, but in the same token, you don't want to be one of those folks that ends up using his name in a mocking and disrespectful way, because he will know that too, and he will hand you over to these things, and these things will destroy your life.
Yeah.
And then they will. I mean, and there's a lot of people that we care about, and there's people I care about that I don't even know them that much, but I just know what they're going through, what they're sharing, and their interactions with these things, and they think that there's something really special, and it's not special at all. If anything, they're damning themselves and also loved ones and causing problems in their area, and this goes. Anyways, but you wanted to share something, so share that, please.
Yeah, okay. Just back on the hopefully flesh and blood issue, and I'd like to focus on that because I'll go to my grave believing that, and whatever else happens, you just sit back and watch. But anyway, Princeton area again, and this is what all comes back to our family and why I researched this and what we believe. Because the one night on that where my mother had come in contact with that creature that night, it was called Fenton's House, and we were living there. Now, it was a type of place, as I said, that had the woods 25 feet off the back gate, and then the one night, okay, we had a basement that was undeveloped, and when I say undeveloped, we're talking like a dungeon, I call it, and I mention that in the book, is that it had the dirt floor, it had two large old freezers on mounds of dirt, groomed mounds of dirt, and Mom would bake and do all kinds of stuff, and bless her heart, that stuff was always there. We would go down periodically and get goodies we needed. Now, the one night, I think I actually was going down with my brother Alan for, I think, peanut butter cookies and that kind of thing. We'd gone down there numerous times. Now, this is nighttime in the fall, the one year, and could have been in the late 60s. Now, the thing is that Alan's got the flashlight. We come down the back stairs outside, and then you got to round it, and then you got to come down another 3-4 stairs, and then you had a thick plywood door that was close to this place with a latch on it. Well, I noticed the one night the latch is off, and it hadn't been off any other time, just this one time. So the latch is off. I'm going, yeah, okay. Open the door. Alan flashes the light inside the basement area, and we immediately see movement. And I backed off a step or so, and he drops the flashlight. But before he does, and what we see is something moving across away from us behind a pillar, a concrete pillar in the basement area, and it's moving off into the far corner. Now, I asked experts about this with wildlife and animals and things like this. I said, that whole time that we were involved with this, I said nothing looked at us. It would not turn its head and look at us, but it had long flowing hair and head to toe. But the issue is on this is that basement section is under, I'd like to say it's under 5 feet high, because I had to duck down just a touch not to come in contact with floor 2x4s or joists or whatever you want to call them. But the thing is, it was coming away from the freezers, and it was heading off into the corner. It would not look at us. And the thing is, Alan says to me, my brother, he says, Glenn, it's passing behind the pillar. So we didn't think we were hallucinating. Plus, I could see the dust it was conjuring up from the floor. And so when it was moving along, it was picking up the dirt floor idea of it, and it was creating a stir. I would immediately shut that or slam that door shut, and it was bouncing back and forth because, like I said, it was a plywood door on hinges. We didn't pick up the flashlight. It laid there, and then we went up to the house. Richard heard us screaming, and then he actually locked us out. But we immediately got in, and when he figured it out and let us in, and we didn't think for 1 minute that, because I was asked this, and we didn't think it was some young offender just down there stealing cookies or whatever it was, because of the idea of the flowing hair and not making a stand, heading away, not viewing. And the key to it all was from when I talked to researchers and stuff on this was that it never looked your way. And mostly all the time or every situation, something will look at you to see who you are, what you are, and where you're going. And this did not. And so I had a real hard time ever going down there again because I knew someone had been in that basement area. Now, the thing is, when I started to put all this together, because let's face it, I was trying to, in the Princeton area, uncover a number of things. I was trying to tie in adolescent Sasquatch in the area, offspring. I was tying into where they were getting their food supplies. I was tying into gardens. I was tying into there was the Bigfoot that was seen at the Princeton dump, less than 2 miles from town. So it was all over the place. And I had mentioned there was a fellow from Kelowna. I think he worked at the paper there. But anyway, he was hiking, hunting in the Lake Allison area here, just northeast of Princeton. And he said that he had seen an adolescent Sasquatch, and it was less than 5 feet, more towards 4.5 feet high. So whatever was wandering around, we were sort of hoping that what we saw that night had just come in from that stretch of woods and was just gathering up something, because like any other place I talked to hunters, they had their kills hanging in their sheds, and they were carried off hook, line, and sinker. They were just gone missing. Now, they would blame these things on teenagers and others, right? Who knows what. But we found over time that things were going missing, strange things were going on, and these creatures were pretty brave in coming down to that Princeton area. And First Nations people in the region stated the same. They said, they asked me personally, they said, are you on a vision quest, or are you involved with other things of a spiritual nature? Because what you described or what you have said to us, you've obviously seen this creature because of how it acted, or things that I had mentioned concerning its shifting its weight nervously from foot to foot, things going on. So we tried to stick with that, and I really tried to focus on that in the book. But then I also explained everything as we have discussed, because I want somebody, if they think that, hey, I have seen it, but here we are, and then do not let down your guard, because there's other things waiting.
Oh my gosh, there absolutely is. And it's once it gets going, and once they know the game's on, and that's just a reality. I mean, everything I can definitely. I've had the flesh and blood experience. I've had the spiritual experience. I've seen them in all sorts of, in cemetery, ravine, along a creek.
You're always being tested, right?
Always, it seems to be. Although, lately, I don't know. This is not about me. So people hear about my stuff. So I should do something a little more personal and to really share. I've been giving images and all that kind of stuff for folks, capturing these things on camera and all that kind of stuff. But I probably should do a breakdown at some point of all the things I experienced. And I don't know if it's really a blessing or a curse, to be honest with you, at this point, except that, I guess it depends on how you go from what what you do with the information and how you deal with it. So,
well,
anyways, I have to let you go. I don't want to. I really enjoy talking to you, but I have to go pick up my son. So, it's Glen S. Boulier, and it's Witnessing Bigfoot. Flesh and Blood, Native American Legend, or the Devil himself. And I hope that you folks check it out. Check out this interview. You can get the book. It looks like it's Amazon.com, right? Barnes & Noble. Books a million. I don't know if that's still the case. Indie bound. It's still running around about $10.
Yeah, and it can be picked up at the Pine Winds Press. And that's the publisher themselves.
Right. Well, I consider, Glen, you to be a kindred spirit, a brother, and a friend. Even though we've only talked 3 times through the means of the internet and phone, still, we have very similar experiences. I just in a different part of the world, so
yeah,
Ohio. So, but it doesn't seem to matter too much where you're at.
No.
It doesn't seem to. I mean, it seems to be people see these things all over the world. So it's not uniquely North American, although we might have something unique, like you said. There might and there's still in that hope that there is a flesh and blood type thing, but obviously
the evidence is being challenged.
Big time. Big time. So, Glen, thank you so much for spending an hour and a half with me. I'll get a hold of you. I'll send you when I get the video down and downloaded. If there's any images you want me to send or put part of the show as far as the internet, the YouTube video, let me know. Send it, message it to me. You know what I mean?
Yep. You bet.
I guess it'd be okay for sure to use the book cover. It's a very interesting book cover in its own right. Glen Boulier, I hope to talk to you soon, real soon.
Yeah, Michael, thanks so much, and thanks to the listening audience as well.
Yeah. God bless you, my friend, and have a great weekend, huh?
Yeah, you too. You take care.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you are going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
Take it slow. Are you searching?